first breakout session for the morning. You're in the community cat complaint mitigation session. And I get to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Angela Hollinshead, Director of the Kent County Animal Services in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Angela Hollinshead has been a leader in animal welfare in the state of Michigan since 2007. She is a certified animal welfare administrator through the Association for Animal Welfare Advancement and maintains her Michigan certification as an animal control officer. Angela began her career as an animal control officer for Montcalm County before taking on leadership roles at the Humane Society of Mid-Michigan and the Kent County Animal Shelter, where she currently acts as director. Let's give a round of applause for Angela.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Is everybody nice and energized and ready to tackle the day?
Sure.
Thank you for being here today. My name is Angela Hollinshead. I'm the director of the Kent County Animal Shelter. And I try to be interactive, so if you are more of a shy type of personality, just ignore me. I'm going to pick on you, I promise. So, how many of you in the room are animal control officers who do field work? How many of you work for nonprofit humane societies? How many of you have a community cat program currently with your organization? Okay, so some do, some don't. Perfect. We started our community cat program just a few years ago. So I personally went through what was teaching our community what is community cats and educating elected officials in my community about the importance of community cat programming. So we're going to dive into a little bit how I did that and give you guys some tips to help make it work in your community if you're not quite there yet.
Angela, you need to speak a little closer to the microphone.
Sorry, yes. Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes, and I use this a lot when I'm talking to somebody about community cat complaint mitigation. So when cat populations are present, the choice is not between having cats or not having cats. The choice is between having a managed community cat population or an unmanaged one. If we had magic vacuums and we could walk around and just collect up all of the cats that are free roaming, there would still be cats in our community, right? Because people let them roam, they go on walkabouts. So it's really important that when we're communicating about community cat programs that we, oh there we go, I feel really close, that we are really looking at management. And none of this really works if it goes against whatever your local ordinances are. So I encourage everybody before they dive into mitigation with complaints or community cat programming to really look at what your animal control ordinance is, what your city ordinance are, if you work for a county government, and just really have a good understanding of what your responsibilities are as an organization, because that will impact really how this comes into play with your group. So, what is a community cat? There's a lot of different terms from a lot of different organizations, and if you don't have your own term for what you consider a community cat, we like to utilize the ASPCA's version. It's very clear, very concise. This is the one that my organization generally uses when we're communicating what is a community cat. And TNR is something that we talk about a lot. Community cats are generally humanely trapped. They're brought to the vet clinic for spayed and neutered. They're vaccinated. We get the universal ear tip going for them, and then they're returned to their homes. So also having a good understanding of what TNR is, if you, your organization does TNR work, a lot of times community cat and TNR go very close hand in hand. And I can email this to anybody too, if anybody wants a copy of this as well. This one's kind of long and jargony, but really, why we TNR, really the goal is just to reduce the unnecessary suffering, death, and euthanasia of cats. It's good policy for cats, it's good species-specific practice for cats, and it addresses community concerns, reduces shelter intake, and realistically it reduces euthanasia, which is I think what all of us really want to do. So when we talk about community cat complaints, I like to break it down into two groups. We have the lovers and the fighters. So the lovers are people who genuinely care about the well-being of cats in their community. And when you get complaints about the community cats that are out and about, what you're going to hear are things like, there's no food for them out there, or they're left out in the elements. They don't have any access to vet care. They're lost. And the reality is we know that this is a tough group of people because their heart's in the right place. And it's our opportunity to use data and science and best practice to really have those conversations about how these things are more concerning than really what they should be when it comes to our community cats. These are the group that I consider the fighters. They are the ones who will be your complainers about noise. They think that cats are an invasive species. You'll hear groups of people talk about how they're detrimental to the wildlife populations, whether it's birds or what have you. And some of the things that you're going to hear are they fight, they make noise, they keep me up at night. The cats that are in the community cause property damage. They spread disease. And again, back to that wildlife predation. But we use data to debunk the issues. Like we know if we neuter male cats, that it reduces some of those behavior problems, right? It reduces some of the spraying, some of the fighting. But these are some of the most common things that we ran into when we started implementing community cat programming in our community. Some of the basic complaints that we got. And I think the most important thing that we can do when we start hearing these things, and we're starting to do some mitigation with our community cat programming, is follow three really basic de-escalation steps. Listen to them. People really want to be heard. They want to know that what they're telling you is being validated and that you are listening. As the agency that is responsible for this, they want to make sure that you are listening to them. And empathize. As animal welfare people, we look at the world of animals much differently, don't we? For regular community members, they see things differently than we do. We've done a really great job in animal welfare over the last 50 years of telling people, if you find a cat that's injured or lost or roaming about, take it to the shelter. The shelter is a good place to take care of it. In the community cat program, we found that that's not actually the best way to take care of cats. It's not a good path for them. So empathize with them. We understand that there's a noise issue. We understand that maybe this is a nuisance or something that's being problematic for you. And then offer solutions to that. What do you have in your organization's toolkit that can help mitigate any of those issues? Whether it's, hey, we have a local TNR group, so if you have male cats that are fighting, we can help you with that. If you have, a lot of people complain about cats eating their trash. Do you have trash receptacles with lids? Have you ever tried closing your lid? Trying to remove any of those resources. But listen, empathize, and try to offer solutions. The moment we start to get defensive and look at it as confrontational, the conversation just goes out the window. You're going to lose them at that point. And explain the fix. So we know that getting them sterilized resolves a lot of the issues that people have. Behavior mating, cats biting, females vocalizing. Another common complaint is the smell. I don't know if you've ever gotten calls from people that say, hey, there's male cats and they're urinating on my porch and it smells really bad. I need animal control to come and get them. And we can talk about solutions. If someone is bothered by a cat's presence in general, their visibility will be much lower post-neutering because they won't be roaming as much. These conversations also work well with neighborhood associations. So you can get to groups of people instead of just individual residents. That's always more helpful. Neighborhood associations, city boards, any kind of organizational group that might be beneficial to have a conversation with. And then we also have our legal and ethical implications, and these are actual snippets of people complaining about the legalities of community cat programs, whether it's TNR or your animal control officers are collecting cats from the community, having them spayed, they're the ones releasing them back. And how do So just because a cat is friendly does not mean that it doesn't have survivability, right? And again, going back to those data points and really relying on that to kind of combat when you get these types of concerns brought up. How many of you have really awesome feline reunification rates in your shelter? Nobody. Oh, good for you. That's amazing. Classically, across the country, reunification of cats in shelters is really non-existent. And we also try to share that with people as well. One of the things that we really talk about when somebody reaches out to us and says, hey, there's a cat that's been hanging around my house, I'm not quite sure what to do with it. We will ask, is it friendly? Is it healthy? Okay, please don't steal your neighbor's cat, right? Don't take your neighbor's cat. It's unlikely that it's going to get reclaimed. Our reclaim rate for cats at our shelter is about 3%, which is pretty average. So the likelihood of that person ever seeing their cat again is pretty low. We first started our community cat programming in Kent County in 2019. Prior to that, we operated like a lot of shelters did many moons ago, where cats came in, it was open admission, we just took everything, and naturally that resulted in a lot of euthanasia for cats. Over 15,000 cats from 2011 to 2023. And again, what we found is that capture, removal, and euthanasia does not reduce cats in our community. It's just terrible for cats. So since then, we have changed all of our programming and how we do intake on our cats, and really increased our community cat programming to try to divert any cats from coming in. Because we are a municipal county shelter, we have a statutory obligation to accept all of the strays. So we are lucky enough to have staffing levels to be able to have a lot of in-depth conversations about community cats. So when somebody calls and says, I have a stray cat, and we give it to you, we immediately launch into, here's what community cats are, here's what you can do to make sure that we have the best outcome for that cat.
Thanks.
And you'll notice in about, in 2019 is when we started, so you can immediately see the euthanasia numbers started to plummet, and our adoption numbers started to increase, and we were doing a lot more life-saving with cats. And a lot of it was having those in-depth conversations about community cats and how community cat programming is beneficial for them as a species. At the end of our conversations, if somebody says, I don't care, take the cat, we have an obligation to take it. But even through just having those conversations and sharing some of the data, we've been able to reduce our feline intake and increase our life outcomes. That's a really sad number. But we're happy now that it is all the way down to Not all organizations have the ability to have a vet on staff. We are very grateful that we have an amazing veterinarian at the Kent County Animal Shelter. And going hand in hand with our community cat programming was our tracking to return. We don't have the staffing to physically catch and return cats to the community, but we work very closely with 2 TNR groups in our community. And they do most of the transporting for us. We do all of the surgery. And when we talk about increasing that community cat programming, we talk about increasing our TNRs. And that's also beneficial in making sure that we're doing everything that we can to support them. And then, of course, lean on your mission and your vision. If you don't have one, which you all generally should, or if it's outdated, we encourage everybody to really take a look at it and fall back on it. When somebody approaches you, if you're in leadership or if you're an animal control officer and you're out on the road, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what do you do with all these cats? There's just all these cats everywhere. Fall back on your mission. We say that, our vision is to create a compassionate community where every animal is respected and valued, even the cats that live freely in our community. That's included in our vision. And utilize that. Fall back on it. And then we want to build a positive culture around cats. So we want to use supportive, not harmful language. And sometimes we have to tailor our language based on who we're talking to. So if we're talking to the Audubon Society about, or our local Audubon group about cats, we need to make sure that we're paying close attention on how we're communicating that. If we're talking to our local board of commissioners, we need to make sure that we are being mindful about using supportive language. How many of you have seen this? We saw this morning. So these are old, and what these do, in my opinion, is they devalue cats. So when I see this, I think that this is like cats are just out of control and they multiply like crazy and they are a plague on this earth. And I think that when we use visuals like this, it continues to devalue them. We need to make sure that we are presenting cats as companions, as family members, as living members of our community. So we have ditched sharing any of these just because, again, I think it devalues them and it can move into harmful language. And I say this all the time with my team. People that love animals aren't experts. You're the experts. So experience in the field, conferences, training, all of these things make you an expert. And I think there are probably many of us that have taken phone calls and they're like, I love cats. I know everything about them. That's nice. You're not an expert. So loving animals doesn't qualify someone as an expert. I usually share that with my team and I encourage you to just keep that in mind because some days everybody knows more than us, right? At the end of the day though, we are the experts and we are the professionals. And again, going back to facts. Always use facts. And I generally will share facts that I think are interesting with people when they come up and they want to complain, or they're learning about community cat programming and they're not quite sure, I don't know much about cats, I just know that they live in my community. So there's actually some really interesting facts that I'd like to share. One of them was that cat litter really wasn't introduced until 1947. So we didn't really bring cats indoors until the 50s. And realistically, cats biologically are the same as they were thousands of years ago. They don't need us. We're a good meal and we're good caretakers because we've stepped into that role. But the reality is that their basic behaviors and needs haven't changed much. And I really like to use Alley Cat Allies. They have a really a great host of information, Human Animal Support Services. At the end of the presentation, I have some QR codes that you can take and snap to get your own data from. A cat's social ability in humans does not reflect its ability to thrive outdoors. Again, we talk about the lovers and the haters. Those lovers will say, oh gosh, that cat is just so nice, he's not gonna make it. Well, if he has a good hair coat, he's clean and he's healthy, he has all the resources he needs, let's get him neutered and get him back to his resources. Just because they're friendly doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the ability to take care of themselves. And some of them, as you all know, prefer it that way. They don't want to be in our houses. They want to be outside where they've lived their entire lives. And they now have a place in our natural landscape. When you're communicating about community cats, whether it's social media, on your website, print material marketing, we always want to paint the most accurate picture. So a lot of times, community members, when they think of barn cats or community cats, they tend to picture what we have here on the left, which is the raggedy, sick cats. And don't get me wrong, we all know that there's cats out there that exist like that, but there are also the cats on the right who are really well adapted to being community cats, and really trying to shift any of the sharing that you're doing media-wise to those positive photos and painting the most accurate and best picture of the cats that are in our community. Use your social media to share education. We got grant funding for some Facebook ads a couple years ago, and we did a couple community cat slides. And we did one weekly with a little information piece with it, and continued to share those and really just focused on different aspects of community cats. What is a community cat? What is the vacuum effect? What is TNR? We all know what TNR is, but there's a lot of people that live in our communities that have no idea. I think when people envision TNR, they think of animal control officers just indiscriminately shoving cats out the door. And we know that's not what happens. They're going home, they're not going to random locations. So really just sharing the basic information about what is community cats. We talked about some of the community cats in our community. We have the Creston Cat Community, which is a neighborhood that has their own colony that they care for. And again, when we talk about communication, We have the neighborhood associations who are really helpful. You can get your neighborhood associations on board to understand, again, using the data, using science. It's more helpful if you can build kind of a team of supporters in the community. Is there anybody here that physically goes out themselves and takes cats back to their spot when they do TNR? Yeah. Do you get approached by people often when you do that? Yeah. We talked about some of the annoyances that people tend to complain to us about with the community cats, and then offering again those solutions. Dislike of citrus and coffee grounds, making sure that lids are on your trash cans, things like that, and really trying to share as much of that information as possible. And then again, talking about how they're not just randomly released in the common area. We also really have a lot of conversations about not all cats are good TNR cats. We really make sure that we share with our people that we're communicating with that not every cat is going to go back out in the community. If it's injured, if it's a neonate, if it's a senior, if it has some health issues, those cats are going to stay with us. They're not going back into the community. And I think that's one more concern that the lovers have is that, well, this cat from students injured, you're just going to vaccinate it and get back out. Nope, those ones are not good candidates for TNR community cat programming. So they're going to stay with us. And then we educate about ear tipping. A lot of people don't know what happens after the surgery that they get their ear tipped. So we tend to show a lot of visuals of cats with their ear tip on, or off. So people have an understanding, and that's one of the very questions we ask when we get a phone call about somebody who is concerned or complaining about a cat. Have you looked at its ears? Is it missing the tip of its ear? And a lot of people go, well, that's weird. Why would it be missing the tip of its ear? We do that intentionally so we can identify them as a community or a TNR cat. We have had conversations with a lot of our local veterinarians and tried to get them on board with asking owners if they want to have their cat ear tipped, if it's going to be an outdoor cat. So if it's roaming outdoor, even though it's an owned cat, if somebody spots it from a distance, an animal control officer and a welfare worker, they know that that cat's already been spayed or neutered. And one of the best things you can do is clearly define your program language or your policy and make it public. What does trap and return mean to your organization? What cats qualify for TNR for your organization? What again is your community cat policy? What's your definition of community cats? Return to field. Is that something your organization does internally, or do you utilize TNR groups for that? Who are your caretakers? Do you have staff? Do you have community members? Do you have associations? And then again, which cats and kittens are not candidates for that TNR or those community cat programs? And one of the best things that you can do is you can follow national best practice. So when we go into a conversation with an elected official about community cats, because maybe they have complaints, what we do is really weigh heavily on this is national best practice. This is not some harebrained idea that Kent County Animal Shelter came up with because we don't want to take cats, right? This is national best practice. It's supported by data and science, and it's been going on for many years, and it's been proved very successful. So always, always, always quote or utilize your best practices and where you get your information from. And when you have those conversations, lean on it. We also partner with the local, as our municipal shelter that we are, we partner with our local humane societies as well. We share our adoption survey, so all 3 logos are on the top of our adoption survey. We also share a lot of our cat programming. So when we say, yes, this is something we do, it's also something that the Humane Society does, and our other humane partners do. It was more of a strength in numbers. And start at the top. Get your community leaders and elected officials on board, and it's easier for the community to get on board. As a municipal shelter, I have 26 county commissioners that I report to, and none of them know anything about cats. They have other stuff to worry about, right? They're not cat people. So preemptively what I did was I sent them our community cat program information, and I said, you are going to get calls about this. It's going to happen. It might happen tomorrow, it might happen 6 months from now. One of your constituents is going to call and complain that there's not enough being done about the wild cats living in whatever neighborhood. So I drafted a letter, got some of that data around, and shared that with all of our commissioners right away. And when we get new commissioners that filter in after the start of the year, again, I go through and I pre-vet them with all the information about community cats that I can throw at them. They're likely going to get the complaints and they're going to say, I don't really know. But if you preemptively give them some data and some information, they're going to go, hey, you know what? I remember our shelter talking about that, our Humane Society, our animal control officers. Let me circle back on them and we can have a conversation about it. Just always prepare ahead of time. And what does that look like? So when we went into this head first, because we did not have any community cat programming prior to 2019, we needed some support to make sure that our community understood how important this was and how good it was for cats as a species. So what we did was we reached out to our national and local organizations and we got letters of support from HSUS, got them from Best Friends. There was a whole bunch of different organizations that we reached out to and said, hey, community cat programming works. We're going to do this in our community. They might have a fit about it. So can you help us? And they said, sure. And so to this day, I still have all my letters. And again, work with your local animal welfare organizations and your veterinarians. If there's a Humane Society that is across town, touch base with them and go, hey, can you provide us a letter of support that community cat programming is important? And how your organization manages community cats, and that we want to be on the same level with that. Local wildlife conservation organizations, kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of predation in wild cats. We can get them spayed and neutered and get our community cat population somewhat under control. We will have less predation, and that is what really our wildlife conservation people really would like to see. And again, partnering up with your environmental health department. If you have an environmental agency through your county, we have environmental health through the Kent County Health Department, and they work on a lot of different aspects. One of them is disease control, rabies, distemper, so we will often partner with them and work through different ways that we can collaborate and again that strengthen partnerships. And at the end of the day, we all share a common goal: to reduce the number of fur-roving cats and create a healthier population and a healthier community. And then one of the best things you can do when you're first kicking off this is track your impact, whatever it is. Anything that you can put in an infographic that shows data and positive movement. It could be your TNR numbers, any information you've provided to the community. So touch points for your community members, how many caregivers you have. So when you say, hey, we spayed and neutered 600 cats this last year, but we have 300 people who are dedicated to caring for colonies. See if there's a decrease in your intake and a decrease in your healthy outcomes. And see if there's a decrease in your related cat complaints. Try to start tracking all of that. Any historical data that you have is helpful, and then pick a point in time and start tracking forward and see if you can see those positive changes. Those are really powerful tools when it comes to going into a conversation with somebody about community cat complaints. And arm your field services with them. So it's easy for me to sit in my office and have all this data, but when the animal control officers are out on the road and they're face to face with somebody who's really mad about a cat getting into their trash, it's important that they have access to this information as well. To make sure that we're sharing that with our field service teams, so they also have the ability to have that data and that information that's specific to your organization as well. So kind of from the beginning, know the why. Why is community cat programming good? How does it help cats? Work on the de-escalation. Allow your team to practice, to know how to do de-escalation conversations. Again, empathize, offer solutions. Lean on your data and facts. Those are going to be really helpful when you're having those conversations, whether it's with the county commissioner or the neighborhood association around the corner who's mad because McDonald's never closes their dumpster and there's cats living all over it. Utilize your mission and your vision. It's very powerful when we do this. And again, be mindful to use supportive language for cats. They're not a plague on this earth. They are animals that live alongside us, and we need define your policy or your position. And again, share that with your teams, share that with your frontline staff, make sure that you're exercising that and they all have a good understanding of the position that the organization stands. And again, follow best practice. None of us thought of this stuff on our own, right? So when we go into these conversations, and sometimes people can be very stubborn, it's really important to be able to fall back on the fact that this is something that has been scientifically proven. There's a lot of data that supports it, and it's not something that one single organization came up with. And then prepare everybody that you can. City leaders, commissioners, community through education, conversations. We have not done this yet, but we are looking at planning our first Q&A session where we invite the community and community leaders in just to have a Q&A about what we do at the shelter with a really strict focus on community cats. Because again, our community is still adjusting. It's a community cat program, and for us is still pretty new. And then track that impact. Make sure that you are taking note of really any kind of data points that you can collect and share that support that your programming is making a difference. And then again, when those elected officials come in, or even if it's if you're at a nonprofit, it's one of your humane board members. Sometimes the community will reach out to them and go, hey, you're on the humane board, you're also working in our community, we have this issue with cats. Make sure they're prepped, or at least have a good idea of what your programming looks like. City leaders, code enforcement officers, animal control officers, as much as you can share, the better. And be patient. It takes time for a community to embrace a new model. So if you already don't have community cat programming or robust TNR programming and you're looking to get into it, it's going to take a little time for your community to understand and see change. When we first started, we received a lot of calls from people complaining that I just saw an animal control officer drop a cat out of his van. Well, first of all, here's what community cats are, here's how it benefits the species, and here's what that cat has, and it's actually going home, right? And in having that conversation and hoping by the time we get done talking to that individual that they have a better understanding. I think a lot of the issues that we run into with our community cat communication is really they just don't know what we know, right? Again, they love animals, but that doesn't make them a professional. So be patient. There was a local community in Michigan that started their community cat programming about 10 years ago. And when they first started off, it was pretty rough. There was a lot of complaints, there was a lot of issues, and now it is a well-embraced, celebrated program that they have, and the majority of their community supports it, and they understand the importance of it, and they're seeing the results. So be patient. And these are the resources where we pull a lot of our information from: Best Friends, Alley Cat Allies, HAAS, and the ISPCA. They are gold mines worth of information. Anything that you want to share, they have printable materials. Really just, again, going back to utilizing what is best practice and following national data and trending for cats, community cat programming, things like that. We have 10-ish minutes for questions or comments. So how do you go ahead?
I'm sorry. Can you talk a little bit more about how you work with those two TNR groups? Like, do people call you guys to say I have a community cat issue, or do they call the TNR groups? Like, how does that work more specifically?
Yeah, so with our TNR group,
Would you mind repeating the question?
oh yes, thank you.
Yes.
So she wanted to know how we communicate with our TNR groups for the TNR work that they do. And essentially, some people will call our shelter and say, hey, I have a mom and cat, and she's been out in my yard, and I think she's had kittens. With the group that we work with, we have a really, really close relationship. So we actually will just take their information down, and we'll tell them, we're gonna pass this along to our TNR group. If you're okay with that, they will reach out to you, and they will schedule a time for pickup. They do all of that for us, which is really amazing. And in return, we do all of their surgeries. So almost 700 a year. For them, and we have one vet on staff who is amazing. She does those in addition to our shelter pets, but they do all the transporting, all the pickup for us.
what does your program do?
So when returning to field isn't an option, what do we do? That's a great question. So there are always going to be animals that come in, even from our TNR groups, that are injured, or when they're on the table, the vet finds something that maybe we didn't know was there when they arrived. Those instances, we end up taking those cats into our program. The reason we do it that way is because at the end of the day, we have a legal obligation to take them anyway. So it's generally a small percentage of our TNR cats that come in that stay with us, but we will generally take them into our adoption program if they are not candidates for TNR because we found something after they arrived. Sometimes the TNR ladies will take them back after we treat them, and they have ways to adopt them out, but 9 times out of 10 they end up in our care and we put them through our program.
Do you have a contact where we can contact you to get maybe a copy of your slides or of the?
Yes, a contact word. Does this conference email a packet out at the end of all the slides?
It'll be posted on
Yes.
the Pet Friendly website.
Perfect.
The entire, everybody's slides will be on the Pet Friendly website after the fact.
Good. How many of you have had a really tough conversation with somebody in the field while returning a cat? Yeah, that's tough. We started out originally when we first started with our community cat program, our animal control officers did a lot of our return to field. And we received a lot of complaints from the community about people, again, the lovers, going, oh my gosh, I just saw an animal control officer put this cat out, and really trying to touch base with them and have those conversations about what is community cat programming. And I think that the best tool that we've learned to use is really the empathy and the understanding and opening up that conversation. And sometimes they're lengthy because the people are really mad, but it's just part of what we have to do.
I'm just curious, so I know that you guys do a lot of work with the 2 TNR groups, and you pass on information, and that's how you're getting a lot of the TNR community cat surgeries that you're doing. But as an open admission shelter, you guys are gonna have strays that just come to you anyway. Do you guys do like shelter neuter return practices with those cats who come to you not necessarily knowing it's a TNR intention?
So do we do shelter neuter return?
Yeah.
We do, with a couple caveats, to make sure that we will tell the person if they're bringing a cat in and we know that maybe it's a good candidate for TNR. We'll be honest with them, you might see this cat back in your neighborhood, but here's what things we're gonna do to it. We're gonna spay and neuter it, we're gonna get some basic vaccines, and we're gonna make sure that it continues to have resources. We do a smaller amount of that just because we don't have caretakers that we set up our schedule. That's done through our TNR group. I think if you were a shelter that could pull that off, having a small group or groups in the community of caretakers is the best way to go about that. We're not on that level quite yet. Right now it's just through our TNR groups, but they do amazing work. We're so thankful to have the partnership. And if you have a TNR group in your community, we encourage you to partner with them and really try to share those resources. We would not be able to do nearly as many TNRs if we didn't have, her name's Maureen, and she drives all over the place.
Do you ever find that maybe cats are being blamed for what wildlife is doing, like getting into trash? That's not really a cat, that's probably more of a possum or a raccoon or something like that.
Absolutely, people blame cats for things that wildlife do, and we often hear that. And our local zoo actually had an issue with raccoons, so they actually started capturing and sterilizing and TNRing the raccoons. Which was really cool because we could also use their scientific modeling as it works not only for cats but also works for wildlife that live in the park at the zoo. And same thing, if you keep those populations in the space, it prevents the vacuum effect, and apparently that works in raccoons as well. So yes, we do find that when we talk complaints, it's usually, are you sure it's cats and not raccoons or possums? And remove all of those resources, because they're not going to get into your trash can that has a lid on it. And I use that as one of my weapons when somebody is really coming at me hard about complaining about cats. Well, if there's cats getting in your trash can, I can guarantee there's raccoons getting in your trash can. So unless you physically see that cat in there, it might be a raccoon. Either way, put your lid on your trash can. Problem solved. They just don't necessarily think about that.
How did your organization decide on criteria for what cats are eligible for TNR?
So how do we decide on what cats were eligible for TNR? So we went into that with best practice. We looked at the resources from Best Friends, from Haas, from ASPCA. We consulted with our shelter veterinarian. If you have a shelter veterinarian, it's always going to be your best go-to. If you don't have a shelter veterinarian on staff, touch base with one of your local veterinarians or whoever your contracted veterinarian is. And again, having the opinion of a licensed professional also provides a little more support for what your program is doing. If you think about it and going, well, we just decided this, or a licensed veterinarian told us this is best practice. Like when you have that conversation, it's always good to try to take opinions from whatever veterinarian you can. That's how we did ours. And it's injuries, skin issues, obviously runny noses, things that need treatment or that we think are contagious tend to stay with us. Sometimes we can sweet talk the TNR ladies into taking them back with the medicine and taking care of them before they let them go. But that's not the reality for a lot of TNR groups, so we're very grateful for that.
Mobile home communities. That seems to be my biggest issue. I'm the director of my local shelter. I started our TNR program probably 7 or 8 years ago. I can get everyone on board. We even got our county ordinance switched over and all that good stuff. We've got that passed. I can't get mobile home communities on board with TNR whatsoever. They just want all the cats gone. And I keep trying to explain to them, you know, I can remove all these cats, and in 3 years, you're going to have the exact same population back here. There's, you know, they can get under the houses, there's shelter, there's resources, there's food. Not to mention, typically lower income people who aren't spaying and neutering their animals anyways. I TNR probably 60 cats at one mobile home community that the mobile homes had holes in the floor, so they couldn't even keep their cats inside if they wanted to.
Yeah.
I just can't. They're private property because of the owners, the managers of the property. So I can't get them on board. They just don't want any cats that they can see. They don't want them outside. They don't care if they're ear tipped. They don't. And it got to a point where we're a very small rural county. I have the property owners now trapping and going and letting them out in the country. Ear tipped cats, the whole nine, because they know my animal control officer is going to open the trap up and let the cat back out because it's ear tipped. I guess any recommendations for dealing with mobile home communities?
Do you have an obligation in your community to pick up stray cats?
Yeah, we are open to mission.
Okay. So I would suggest, and you've talked probably to the manager of the park.
Oh, I've talked to all of them. Yep.
Have you talked to the individual residents or the cat owners there?
And I do get a lot of them on board. That's how the one mobile home community I was able to get into, they ended up talking to their manager and getting their manager on board because everybody there cared about their cats. They wanted them fixed. They just don't want to see them three-legged, you know, all the good stuff. I was one out of probably 5 in my county. I've gotten on board with that, and it was through the residents. It wasn't through me. But I can take all the facts. I can take the vacuum effect. I can take all the research. All the cats are 17 times more likely to find their way home from outside. I can throw out all the stats at them, and they just don't want to see the cats. They just don't want to see them. And I cannot, for some reason, especially with 2 of our big. And one of the parks probably has over 100 homes in it. I mean, it's huge. I've got a huge population of cats out there. So that's where I'm butting heads.
That's a tough one. I would suggest getting more of the lovers on board. So going around in the park, if you have the ability to do that, because it's private property, and surveying the park maybe, and asking out of the people that live there how many of them are comfortable living with community cats, do they know about community cats, and maybe hosting an information session, like a communal information session. Invite everybody in the park and go, hey, there's clearly a cat issue here. Again, we all want a healthier community for our people. We want a healthier community for the cats. And how can we do that and kind of bring them in on the conversation, maybe through a meeting or a Q&A session.
Thank you.
You might reach out to Alicia with Street Cat Community Outreach.
Oh, yeah.
She's in the Martinsville area, she deals a lot with the mobile home communities down there.
Oh, no, I did. So when I went to that street community, I
Can you hear her?
inside house.
Megan, can you stand up and project?
Project.
Yeah.
So, I am friends with Alicia, Wiseman Valley, and she runs Street Cat Community Outreach down in the Martinsville area. She used to work with the American Cat Community Society. She does amazing work, and she deals a lot with local communities. We at Cuddle Me Cat Rescue have taken in some of the cats that were adoptable, but she runs a fabulous program, and so she might have resources to help.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's what.
Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I hope that all of you continue the good work that you do. Thank you.